The banks here, they're insolvent. The entire financial system operates in a perpetual black hole. The banks are getting a backdoor bailout here. These banks here have bad loans that we're not even really allowed to know about here. Their balance sheets are negative. I would be willing to say that every single major bank has a negative balance sheet. The system is being taken apart systematically and deliberately. This is not an accident. This is no comedy of errors why we are in the place that we are anywhere in the world. This is an extinction level event on a global scale.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for February 10th through February 17th, 2025, while supplies last. This week we feature pre-33 AU $20 gold St. Gaudens coins at just $50 over melt per coin. We also have backdated silver Austrian Philharmonics at just $2.85 over spot. Backdated Canadian 1-ounce gold maples are just $59 over spot. And pre-65 junk silver dimes and quarters are at the lowest price in years at just $1.49 over spot. Pre-65 junk half dollars are just $1.69 over spot. And 1 10th-ounce gold Britannia are just $29.99 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this wildly popular returning guest, Gregory Mannarino, a longtime trading coach and the founder of TradersChoice.net, is here with us again on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Greg, thanks for joining us again here on Liberty and Finance.
Man, thanks for having me. Love being here. Love you, brother. It's all good.
When I say wildly popular, it's because you started your YouTube channel after we did, and you've zoomed past us like by 2.5 times. Your subscribers are enthusiastic about following you, and I think one of the reasons is you call it like you see it, and you've been out there, as you say, over the target for quite some time. And right now, we're hearing some pretty conflicting, at least when you look at it from a logical standpoint, it seems pretty conflicting information coming out of Washington, D.C. We have Elon Musk and Trump saying that they're going to do this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is going to find many hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars to cut out of the federal budget. And there seems to be no shortage of wasteful things that they can identify. But the question is, your big view of the possibility within the current system of actually being able to reduce the size of government, the size of debt, given the fiat model that we're subject to from the central banks and the runaway currency creation. Can you talk to us about your view of the big picture of the real potential, or lack thereof, for reducing government spending in the face of the fiat model that we're under?
Well, first off, I am absolutely all for cutting the size of government, for finding, apparently there's been a huge amount of fraud that's been found already, misallocation of funds found already, corruption found already. All right. I love hearing this stuff. I want to find out who's responsible for it. And eventually, hopefully, we will see some information on this be released to the public. And not just that, more importantly, is who's responsible for the fraud, for the misallocation of funds, for the corruption. Let's see some arrests. I understand this is going to take a little time to play out here. People just, they start to snap and they get triggered real quick. So I understand this is going to take some time. Yes, I hope we do see some action. I hope we see even just one high-level arrest take place. And maybe the bigger part of it is, can we claw back some of these apparent misallocated funds, fraud, and corruption? I mean, seriously. Anyway, but look, here's what's happening, in my opinion. We already know, and this is pretty widely known right now, we're already spending 3.4% of U.S. GDP on defense. Looks like we're going up to 6%. So United States is already, and in fact, I just talked about this morning, the number one investor in defense in the world. We spend more than any other nation on defense. So now this is a shell game, obviously. There's going to be no net cuts to anything with regard to the government. And how do we know that? What do we know will not be allowed to happen? A drop in U.S. GDP won't be allowed. So again, we're seeing this shell game play out however it works. I mean, I'm not saying there's not fraud here. Obviously, there is massive fraud all over the place. It's interesting, some of the people that are investigating it, though, guys like Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen, who just took down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau here. Andreessen, number one, not the greatest guy. People should do their own research on this kind of stuff as to what's happening. Andreessen actually blamed the Consumer Financial Protection Agency for terrorizing the banks. Terrorizing the banks, interesting. What's happening here is what you and I think we spoke about the last time, whatever. I've been trying to warn people about this, a massive deregulatory environment. The banks here must be deregulated to allow the system to move forward here in multiple ways. This isn't just one thing. The merging, obviously, of cryptocurrencies in the banks here, they're insolvent. The entire financial system operates in a perpetual black hole. The banks are getting a backdoor bailout here. And over the weekend with the virtual shutting down of the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, which I'm sure there's fraud going on over there like every other agency. These corporations here, they're frothy with it, obviously. Anyway, this is a major win. Regardless of what you may think about the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, they'd return $17 billion to people who were wronged by the banks. Now, who are we going to complain to? President Trump, Musk, Andreessen? I don't think so. Obviously, look, man, what's being set up here, quite obviously, is multiple things that people need to pay attention to with Bank of America. I've been talking about this bank for years. I think it's being set up as the fall guy for Wall Street. Trump did point this out at the World Economic Forum, before the world, blaming this institution here for things which may or may not even actually be true. All these banks are responsible for, whatever they are. And apparently Fox Business, Fox News did a report that they're debanking conservative Republicans. Okay, maybe that is true, but their CEO is a conservative Republican. People can look this stuff up. The CEOs of every corporation's profile is public knowledge. We can just see this stuff. Okay, maybe it did happen, but the bottom line is, why is it being set up? And why did Greg Mannarino pick this up before anybody even opened their mouths about it? Because this is being set up as the fall guy. Again, blame must be assigned. They know the system is being taken apart systematically, piece by piece, brick by brick, to issue us a new system here. We all know it. Everyone knows it's coming here. So they need to assign blame. It always comes down to this. It's basically the way people's minds work. So they're going to assign blame. And again, they're going to chop up Bank of America's assets. Eventually, what's going to happen here, Bank of America, the people are going to get the garbage, and the other Wall Street institutions are going to get the good assets here. All these banks are in a lot of trouble, and we're going to see a much greater consolidation of power moving forward, something I believe you and I have been speaking about for a very, very long time. The consolidation of power is key to the new system. More power in fewer into your hands moving forward, more control of the people underneath. Anyway, this is how it's playing out. This is where it's going. Absolutely. It's too easy. Just connect the dots, and it's not too hard to see. My job as an analyst, really, of a macro analyst, is basically to connect the dots. And in this kind of environment, it's just too easy to read where we're going, what's happening here, how we're going to see this play out moving forward with regard to currency devaluation, artificially suppressed rates, and the higher cost of living for people around the world, not just here in the United States. And there's a bigger issue here in the United States, being that we still have the world reserve currency, the fact that the world today is moving away from the dollar, the inflationary environment we're in around the world, not just here in the United States. Central banks continue to buy it all. Why is it that central banks right now are the number one buyers of gold, on top of being the number one issuers and buyer of debt? Maybe people should really start to open their minds a little bit, and don't look where our politicians want you to look. It's a game. It's a game. It's a grand deception. They don't want you to see things. They don't want you to pay attention to what's going on underneath it, or you can't be aware. But it's pretty much in our face. And I think the people that follow our work, honestly, They get it, and they're taking action. They're not just sitting back, sucking their thumb.
Wanted to zoom in on several points that you raised there. One is the potential benefits coming from the Department of Government Efficiency actually finding, identifying, and eliminating sources of just egregious waste and corruption in government spending. It sounds like there's plenty of that to be had, but you made a provocative statement about you think that there's going to be a net zero sum game there, because if expenses just get moved around, increasing, for example, the defense spending, et cetera, which ironically calling it defense is another thing we should probably talk about. Why do we have 750 military bases around the world, et cetera? But can you talk to us a little bit more about this pea and shell game that you see happening rather than actual reduction in real government spending?
Of course, it's just a shell game. They're just going to move cash from one place to another because, again, it comes down to GDP. Government spending is a huge part of U.S. GDP. Now, I can't imagine, and if I'm wrong on this, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, that President Trump here is going to allow U.S. GDP to drop. Again, we are making America great again, apparently. We have to show that America is a beacon around the world here. If GDP in the United States were to fall, now, second of all, that plays into defense spending here. They're talking about 6%. So 6% of what GDP? Of a lower GDP or a higher GDP? Man, government spending, there's no way this is going to stop. They can find fraud and corruption and everything else, and I know they're going to. I mean, it's everywhere. I'm sure it's rampant. But again, what the bigger picture is, who's going to be held to account for it? Are there going to be eventual arrests? Are we going to be able to claw back some of this cash that apparently... First of all, there's been no forensic audit here. A forensic audit takes many months. This is just stuff that they're looking at, or maybe even making up out of nothing, because they think people are dumb. Most people have never even heard of a forensic audit, what this actually means, how they track the money. You can't just one day look at the books and say, okay, this fraud, I see it, it's right here in our face. Not saying it ain't happening, I'm sure it is. But let's see a forensic audit. Let's have an open book where the people of the United States are actually shown proof. Okay, guys, this is what's happening. These are who are responsible. This is what we're going to do to hold these people to account. And maybe we can claw some of that cash back. That's what I'm interested in seeing. Otherwise, this is just conjecture, speculation. It could be threats and intimidation as well. We don't know what's going on here. There's so much stuff going on underneath all of this that people aren't allowed to know. Again, we're being hit with a flurry of executive orders at such a pace. People can't focus on one or the other. There's something else going on here. We can't focus. We don't know what's going on here. People aren't really being told. They're not being allowed to absorb it. It's just wham, bam, 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 bam. And people are just throwing up their hands saying, okay, look, I can't pay attention to it, so I'm not even going to look at it. That's what they're hoping to achieve here. It's always the same story. It's a grand deception in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Let's give this some time to see where it goes. I think that's fair enough.
Still on the topic of audit, the tantalizing soundbite was floated out there this weekend about, will Ron Paul be selected by DOGE to audit the Fed? Can you talk to us about whether you think, because you've identified central banks of the world as one of the greatest enemies of mankind for the past decade in your publications. Is it even within the realm of realism do you believe that the Fed will actually be audited in any kind of a authentic way?
Well, what I would like people to do as they're listening to here is open up another window and say, has the Fed been audited? You will see that the Fed has been audited multiple times, even as of recently. However, whatever it's all fake anyway. I don't believe any of this stuff. Is it possible that Ron Paul could get in here with the forensic team and look at where the expenditures are, what the Fed's actually, where they're moving cash? And you have to understand this is why we really need a forensic audit of this institution and every institution here that's being that possibly could be involved in fraud and misallocation of funds. The Federal Reserve, along with every other major corporation, they have a public balance sheet and they have a private balance sheet. Now, I want to know if we're going to have access to that, or are they just going to let us know what's on the public balance sheet? I've been telling people for 1,000 years that There are, and this is, again, standard practice of every single corporation that exists. All the major corporations have a public balance sheet and off-balance sheet stuff. Are we going to get access to that? Because the off-balance sheet is what we really need to pay attention to. The public balance sheet, well, they can put any numbers they want in this. It's not real. This is why, okay, you want to look at it? Fine. This is not going to be an overnight endeavor. This would be an undertaking of a tremendous magnitude. Obviously, the audits that are done on the Federal Reserve, and you can look this up for yourself, anyone can, this is just involving the public balance sheet, what they want you to see. I don't care about that balance sheet. I think everyone here doesn't care because they could see it for themselves. You could look, the Federal Reserve claims to be transparent. And for the most part, yes, there is a public balance sheet. You can see where the Fed is allocating funds and what they're doing here with it. But I don't care about that. And I really don't care about that because it's all just fake anyway. None of the government data is real. We all know that. I want to see off-balance sheet transactions, what they're doing, where they're moving cash. Because again, the Federal Reserve, as we all know, has the ability, and they do this, okay, to push cash wherever they want to with zero oversight. Absolute zero. So let us focus on off-balance sheet. Or are we just going to be shown yet another nonsense? Okay, everybody, this is the Fed's balance sheet. We tracked all this stuff and, we found some things here or there. They have to appease the public, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I want to see off-balance sheet. Because if we don't get to see off-balance sheet, then it's a joke. And who's the joke on? The joke they think is on you and me and the people that follow our work. And I can promise you that ain't the case. Because the people that follow our work have been well kept ahead of the curve on this and well educated on how the system functions.
Yeah, when you describe the off-balance sheet detail that gets hidden from the story, the narrative that needs to be told or is officially sanctioned, it reminds me of my career in business where you develop the PowerPoint slides that you're going to show to the high-level executives, and everybody tells you, keep it simple, keep it kindergarten level, just keep it really, really simple. And then you find yourself in front of sometimes an executive who says, what's behind that number? What's behind that number? What's behind that number? And you start to sweat. So yeah, there's a big difference between what you put on the PowerPoint slide, but that's not an audit. The other thing that you were talking about, I wanted to follow up with, and that's the idea that the GDP, which again is just a headline number. We've spoken multiple times with John Williams from shadowstats.com, and he says, you got to understand that it's supposed to be a measure of actual economic activity. But in your recent markets look ahead this weekend, you were talking about the global economy shrinking and contracting and contracting and contracting while debt balloons and balloons and balloons. So talk to us about, just so people who haven't heard it expressed that way get a chance to hear it from you. How can it be that you claim, Gregory Mannarino claims, that the global economy is contracting, and yet we see governments saying, no, look at the GDP, look at the GDP. That's the gross domestic product. That's our measure. That's our flagship measure, our headline measure of economic activity, and that one's not contracting. Help us reconcile those two.
Well, I mean, come on, man. So it's obvious. Let's just look here in the United States. Let's look at industrial output. Let's look at factory activity. I mean, it's in contraction by their own numbers, man. By their own numbers. Every part of this economy, and if you just want to look here at the United States, actually, the service sector is one that they're telling us is doing better than others. We've become a service economy, and we don't make anything anymore. We're not exporting anything. We're seeing debts and deficits balloon like we've never seen before. But I mean, look, economic output globally, let's just look at one factor, and just one. Economic activity based upon industrial output and factory activity everywhere around the world. It's diminishing and diminishing and diminishing, and we're losing. As a matter of fact, what they're not telling people, and I urge people to do their own research on this, look at manufacturing here in the United States. Look at factory output here. We are net every month losing jobs in that sector because it's contracting. And meanwhile, at the same time, we're seeing global debt balloon. I mean, this is not a good situation people to be in. And on top of that, we're seeing currency devaluation continue to accelerate. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop until a single world leader, one, finally steps up and says enough is enough. In other words, if Trump were to say, okay, we need much higher rates. Okay, we're not going back to a constitutional money system. This is the habit I have. I point back at that painting. That's the USS Constitution. Right? It's a habit I've developed here. But we're not going back to a constitutional money system. I think we're pretty much all on the same page. We could end central banking right here and right now by executive order. If Trump would say, no more executive order, no more fiat monetary system, we are returning back to a constitutional money system. We're going to revalue gold 50, 60, 70,000. We end the Fed right here. Federal Reserve ends, no audit needed. And that would start a domino effect around the world with central banks. They would all fail. You take one central bank down, especially this one, the Fed, it ends. The central banking system ends. Or, since we know that's not going to happen, let's have much higher rates. Much higher rates would return purchasing power to the currency. No one's going to tell you that. You know this is to be true. Everyone with even the slightest understanding of finance realizes that this is a fact. Again, look, man, for people who maybe are new to this kind of a thing, in finance and economics, there are literally just two fundamental truths. Number one, to have a strong economy, you need a strong currency. To have a strong currency, you need a corresponding rate of interest high enough to support the purchasing power of the currency. Why is it that people aren't told this stuff? Why is it just non-existent? And then there's a third factor, I guess, if you want, in finance and economics, and that is cash seeks yield. Cash always seeks yield. It moves into places where there's the most growth, basically, is what that comes down to. And that's why we've seen this incredible move here lately with regard to cryptocurrency. We're seeing a historic move here with regard to gold and silver as of late, as central banks are buying it all. Imagine this. Imagine a concept, seriously. Does this sound familiar to anybody who follows my work? Central banks are buying it all. They've been buying it all forever now. Buying all the debt, issuing debt, buying it back through another door, buying assets. And that's what we would find on the Federal Reserve's off-balance sheet. We would see more assets that they're investing in. But we're not going to, I would be willing to bet almost anything, really. In fact, I would say almost literally anything, that we, the people, will never be able to see the Federal Reserve off-balance sheet assets. Do you think that we, the people of the United States, should be privy to that information? Yeah, I think so. But they're going to put on a public show. Maybe the Fed will get audited here, which they've been audited already. Maybe we'll see some kind of a DOGE audit of this thing. But is it going to be real? Are we going to get to see again the off-balance sheet investments or what they've done off-balance sheet, or is it just going to be another public, nonsensical, freak show? My bet is it's going to be a freak show, as usual. It always is, man. The public, people have no idea what's going on, how the system works, why it is why it is, and why they themselves are in the current situation they're in. Why is the world today in the economic situation it's in now? It comes down to two things, which come down to one: artificially suppressed rates, currency devaluation. This is a wrecking machine for the economy and the middle class. It's a massive way to transfer wealth up to the 1% and 2%ers. But people don't know that either. They're not told this stuff. Who's going to tell them besides people like you and me, bro? I don't know anybody else.
As long as you're on the topic of assets on the U.S. balance sheet, we have a video that came out from the Oval Office, nonetheless, over the weekend, of Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, saying we are going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet. Last we were told, a few years ago, the student loan debt was the largest single asset of the United States, and it kind of it rhymed with the recent discovery of pension risk transfer, where a lot of companies are washing their hands of their retirement plans and handing over the responsibility to insurance companies to administer those going forward. So it almost sounds like now some people,
that's going to work out really well, isn't it?
Well, some people have hoped that what this means is when they say the asset, we're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet, thinking, oh great, we're going to monetize gold. But if the largest asset that's declared on the U.S. books is student loan debt, does that mean selling off for net present value the student loan portfolio for cash from large institutions? Or what do you interpret that statement by Scott Bessent to mean?
It's very interesting, honestly. We're not really look, people, they float these things out again, and people's brain starts to whirl around a little bit. We, again, going back to I believe that we, the people, should be privy to this kind of stuff. Let's see an outline specifically of what's being spoken about and how it's going to work. Because again, this just goes back to what I see happening here, unfortunately, is people are not asking questions. They, again, are falling through a trap door, which is set for them. Okay, let's just take the word of this person or this group of people or this organization here because it's all good and they have their best interest in mind. How about instead of like it's interesting how they float this stuff out there. Oh wow, people, 'cause what do people do? Just as you said, they start to, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe this is gonna happen. Oh, wait a minute, maybe this is gonna happen. Oh, that. Let's see a breakdown of this stuff here. I would rather, before I really comment about something like this, let's see, and if it ever happens, and I hope it does, a breakdown of what exactly is being spoken about and how this is going to play out. And then we got to look into this. Again, oh, this is great, but we have to say, okay, this is what they're talking about with regard to this particular asset or whatever it might be. Now we have to say, okay, why is this happening? Who benefits? And there's always going to be a winner and a loser. I think that's pretty obvious. And generally, who loses? Well, the people do. Whenever government touches something, it generally turns to crap. I mean, go back as far in history as you want to go. So we need to see a breakdown of this. It's pretty obvious. It comes down to, again, what I believe we, the people of the United States and the world, need to demand from our government. Start to hold these people to account, push back, ask for specifics. Otherwise, again, they're going to do whatever they want. Whatever they want, and there are going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers. And generally, we know who the big loser is. Unfortunately, it's the people.
On that note, if you could talk about the what you had forecasted for some time now, maybe more than a year, about the potential demise of Bank of America. We had Bear Stearns and others that were selected, Lehman Brothers, et cetera, back in the GFC in 2008, 2009. What do you see ahead for Bank of America, and why do you say it's being selected for sacrifice? And what do you mean by the backdoor bailout that you were talking about over the weekend?
All right. Well, let's start off. Let's start off with Bank of America. For years now, before any news came out on Fox, how they were debanking conservative Republicans or anything else here. Look, what this comes down to is this. I talk to everybody. I talk to a lot of people that I don't even talk about on my blog, but I get information fed to me, maybe I do, maybe I don't, okay, that maybe people don't know, but I kind of tell people what's going on in my blogs, all right? Because if, I'm pretty much an open book. I really, really am. And I also explain to people that Greg does talk to everyone. So I hear things, maybe, that people don't hear. And Bank of America, first of all, if you look at the performance of Bank of America with regard to its peers, it's very poor. And to me, not only is this something else, it's symbolic as well. The fall of Bank of America is symbolic. I think, unfortunately, we're being rapidly transformed into, again, what I've been saying, a new paradigm, a whole new set of rules for a decade. That's where we're going. It looks like things are going to change very rapidly for the good or the worse. I think what people are doing, unfortunately, is willingly surrendering their freedoms and liberties, not asking any questions. Again, this is why people can be taken advantage of. Unfortunately, we do need to hold our leaders to account, no matter how much you may love or hate them. I think that's what we need to do. Anyway, with regard to Bank of America, look, man, it comes down to this. The system is being taken apart systematically and deliberately. This is not an accident. This is no comedy of errors why we are in the place that we are anywhere in the world. Being that we have the greatest threat to humankind right now being hyperinflated, and this is, of course, the global debt bubble, which is going to burst. We're going to end up in a credit freeze, locking up situation, which was happening in 2008. Credit markets, the flow of credit through the markets was stopping. Pandemonium in the streets. They got to set up a fall guy. A fall guy must be set up to assign blame. For Lehman, Bear, these were the sacrificial lambs last time. But what happened? Who really benefited from that? Wasn't we the people? We the people got all the garbage. We were forced to bail out the system. Those institutions were chopped up. And the good assets on their balance sheets were bought for pennies on the dollar by the other institutions. The same thing is going to happen here. The same thing is going to happen here at Bank of America. So it comes down to the setup of the assignment of blame. So that's why Bank of America is being set up and why I was able to call this many years ago. It's too simple to see. Even without anyone talking to anybody else, it is too obvious to see the situation, how it's playing out, what they must do to appease the public here. But again, I think people just are not ready at all for what's coming. They've been duped into believing that there's going to be some great change coming because let's say in this case, President Trump is going to change the entire world by being the new president of the United States. Unfortunately, I think we've outlined pretty much how this is going to play out with the shell game with regard to spending, GDP, cash moving from one place to another here. And I really do want to see some accountability eventually with regard to this. Will the people see one high-level arrest? I doubt it. I'm sorry, I got so sidetracked. What was the second part of that question you asked?
Just again, the backdoor bailout, as you've described it.
The backdoor bailout. Oh, it's pretty simple. Let's look at this here. What do we understand? What do we know? What can we verify? Okay, these banks, the entire financial system operates in a perpetual, never-ending deficit. It's a debt-based system, period. Which means in order to function, debt must be pulled into the system, not even in a linear fashion. It has to be exponential just to support where we are now. I did a whole video this morning, last couple of days, explaining how the markets are in a lot of trouble. Without exponential debt expansion, we're going to go nowhere. So these banks here have bad loans that we're not even really allowed to know about here. Their balance sheets are negative. I would be willing to say that every single major bank has a negative balance sheet. And on top of their negative balance sheet here, it's getting more negative because we're seeing loan defaults skyrocket across the board. This is common knowledge. So what do we have? The Federal Reserve just vastly loosened up their parameters, along with obviously what's happening with bank deregulation. With regard to, first of all, we don't even have a system where banks even need to hold any capital reserves anymore at all. We have a zero reserve system. It's an incredible thing. So, and with regard to cryptocurrencies being merged with the banks, and now via Trump's executive order, the banks now have access to this. This is going to allow the banks to take risks that, with our money, of course, not their own, because they don't have any. And it's going to allow them to do things that we really should be allowed to see, but of course we won't, as always. And they're going to, of course, derivatize every single thing. Nothing's at face value. You have to understand. When an institution like a bank or even a major investor is looking to put cash to work in the market, generally it's not done on a dollar for dollar basis. It's done via a derivative where the leverage is astronomical. And that really comes down to the biggest threat we have to the financial system as a whole. I've talked about this many, many times, is the derivative hyperbubble, which no one even wants to even mention or even talk about, because I don't think people understand what it is, but it's too simple. Derivative is nothing more than a side bet on an underlying asset. And with regard to that, with regard to derivative bets, there's layers of them on either side on the upside and on the downside. It's so astronomically big, no one can get their head around it. It's a monster. It's going to explode along with the debt market. Again, when people look, that makes me laugh too. When you hear, for example, oh, we're in $38 trillion worth of debt, whatever it be, that's face value. What happens to all the derivatives associated with that? I mean, people aren't allowed to know this stuff, because if people really understood the financial system the way that people like you and me and the people that follow our work do, I think people would be running for the hills. They would be demanding that we were told exactly what's going on, but they never do. And then people sit back and they wonder, hey, what happened? Why did I just lose all my investment? Why am I being thrown out into the street here? What's going on? Well, the rich are laughing their way to the bank, literally. People don't know because they're not told. They don't understand the system. And today, just as an example, as we're doing this video here, we got Powell, Fed Chair Powell, my least favorite person on the face of the earth, right before the Senate Banking Committee, being questioned. Oh, thank you, sir, for your service, as they all genuflect as creature power walks into the room. I mean, make this up, dude. We are living in such a twisted, dystopian environment. I don't need to tell you that, or I don't need to tell the people that follow either of our work moving forward. This is not any kind of a utopia for anyone. Maybe for the 1% and 2%ers, but for the rest of us, this is a dystopian society, and it's going to get more bent out of shape moving forward, unfortunately.
One last question is, you've been a critic, I think, in the past of, again, surface actions that are given a spin versus the underlying real effect. What about all these tariffs that Trump has been talking about imposing on trading partners to get them to change their conduct in one way or another, and how the effect you foresee of such a thing on inflation? Or do you think that's just a bargaining chip that Trump's going to continue to wheel out every time he wants to impose his will on different countries' policies?
Well, I'm not saying that it's not some manner as a bargaining chip. I think it probably is in some way, because really what's going to end up, first of all, look, who pays for this stuff? Who really pays for it? Well, it's obviously we the people. And how does that happen? The governments don't pay the tariffs. The tariffs are paid by the importers and the exporters, and those increase in costs are passed on to the people. However, this can hurt business. There's no doubt about it. And that's what obviously the 1% and 2%ers don't want to see that. So it can be used as a bargaining chip. But I don't see this as a long-term way to fix the problem. Okay, Tara, we were told last time, and for people who don't believe what I'm saying, look it up. Trump's tariffs were going to pay off the deficit in, what was it, 2 years? Couple years, everything was going to be paid off, and we were told a lot of things. That tariffs were going to pay for this and pay for that, and they didn't pay for anything. What we did get, unfortunately, was skyrocketing debt under his. And we were also told, again, do your own research on this. I'm not calling the man out. I'm telling you what the facts are. And if you don't believe me, again, look it up for yourself. Open up another window. We were told that the trade deficit would shrink. The trade deficit ballooned to record highs. So when a politician tells you things, don't just believe that that's the way it's going to be. Hold into account, do your own research on this. Is Greg lying? Who really pays for the tariffs? Is it the governments, or is it the importers and exporters and those costs passed on to you? The bottom line is the cost of living here in the United States is going to get much higher, not just via the mechanism of tariffs here, unfortunately, but via the mechanism of currency devaluation. It all plays together. We're under attack. The people, the middle class, and I've been telling people this for a long time, this is an extinction level event on a global scale. They need to create dependency on the system as we are bridged into a cryptocurrency system, which is only a conduit into what everybody knows is coming. Everybody knows we're going into a fully tokenized system. And that drives me nuts, because where's the pushback? People don't want it, but that's where we're going. Everybody knows it, but I don't see anyone, except maybe the people that follow our work, at least raising concern. And I think it's a very big concern, because it's going to come down to power, consolidation of power, a surrendering of rights and freedoms, privacy as well. Moving forward. And unless really we get a situation here where one world leader, just one, says enough is enough, we got to flip the system around, maybe write an executive order, like I said earlier, to make fiat currency illegal, go back to a constitutional money system, we're going to continue to lose. We're not going to, I don't hear not one single world leader saying, you know what? We need to return some purchasing power to the people by vastly raising rates, which would destroy the stock market. Okay, that's why the mechanism of low rates is in place here, to continue to funnel cash into who owns 90% of the stock market? The 1% and 2%ers do. Not you and me. Maybe we have some cash in the stock market, but it's infinitesimal compared to the 1% and 2%ers here. But that's the wealth transfer effect. Shovel it into the market. And of course, what always happens is the 1% and 2%ers, they get out of the market before everybody else does. All right. I've been out of this market since the high of December 5th. I came out publicly telling people I'm out of this market. I nailed the top of this market to the wall. Let's see who else could pull that off. Okay. And I'm not back in here yet. I went over a video today telling people what they need to look at if they're looking to even know the market. And we're stuck without vast expansion of debt and artificially suppressed rates, currency devaluation. The market can't go anywhere. So there are 4 things that people need to be looking at. Number one is if we understand that we're going from 3.4% GDP defense rating to 6%, defense is maybe some place you want to look at. I will not be putting cash into work in defense stocks, but that's one place. 2, banks. Banks are getting deregulated. Banks were handed a gift over this weekend. Gift on a massive scale, thanks to Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen. Deregulation of banks is going to be a very, very good for these institutions. Number 3. That's 2. Number 3, people should be looking at small cap stocks. Why small cap stocks? Small cap stocks, or small cap companies, should I say, are going to be more or less insulated from the issue of tariffs on the trade war. So there's what you got to look at that. And then 4 commodities. I mean, it's a no-brainer. That's what people need to do. So you got four things that people need to be looking. I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm not saying people should invest in any of this stuff here. Who am I to judge anybody? I'm nobody. I'm not supposed to judge anyone. I will never do that. But again, if we don't take action, we're in a lot of trouble here. We're being destroyed. We're being systematically eradicated. It's like bugs. And unfortunately, we need to play this game, and I don't like it anymore. I've become so jaded against this whole thing, and I used to love it. I used to be a guy that used to love to follow the flow of cash through the markets, where it's going, try to make my best call as to where it would go. I've been right about 90% of the freaking time. I think that's pretty substantial. I'm not right all the time. No one can be. I don't care if you're a computer or some AI thing. You're never going to be right about it. But the effort I put into this to give people actionable information has been outstanding, and people have been taking advantage of the situation, but we're forced to do it. I don't like to be forced to do anything, but this has become survival, really, of how to stay ahead of the curve and keep our heads above water. So anyway, I hope you, and I know we are, bro, you and me, we've been out here for a long time, and we are doing our best to keep the people that follow our work ahead of the curve, give them actionable information, allow them to make their own decisions. I don't want to influence not one person here. I want people to listen to what you and I are saying, do their own research, make up their own mind, and then do something about it. Sound about right?
That's always been what you've been saying, as well as exhorting people to care about each other and be charitable to each other. And if people want to tune in and follow your work on a daily basis, and you do publish multiple times per day, plus on the weekend, how should they get connected?
I am probably one of the easiest guys in this world to find, man. Just Google me. But YouTube twice a day. I just said my website, traderchoice.net. If you like anything I said here, or if you like this video, people, look, man, if we've earned a thumbs up out of you, give us a thumbs up. If we've earned your respect from what we've spoken about, share this video. Get it out there. Let people hear this stuff. Because I can't imagine another place where you're going to find information like this.
If you don't want to miss a single episode with Gregory, and he's been gracious enough to find a time on his busy schedule to carve in for us about once a month to be back here on Liberty and Finance, and you or any of our other guests, make sure you're on our free mailing list at libertyandfinance.com. Just put your email address, click submit, and make sure you confirm. On the confirming email, you'll get every interview with Gregory and our other guests, as well as any weekly specials on commodities of a particular shiny nature that Greg was alluding to there at the end. And you won't miss a thing on libertyandfinance.com. Greg, thanks for joining us here again on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks as always, man. Thanks for having me.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin weekly specials for February 10th through February 17th, 2025, while supplies last. This week we feature pre-33 AU $20 gold St. Gaudens coins at just $50 over melt per coin. We also have backdated silver Austrian Philharmonics at just $2.85 over spot. Backdated Canadian 1-ounce gold maples are just $59 over spot. And pre-65 junk silver dimes and quarters are at the lowest price in years at just $1.49 over spot. Pre-65 junk half dollars are just $1.69 over spot. And 1 10th ounce gold Britannia are just $29.99 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.